Hello there. I'm going to talk about something rather important today, which is Ouspensky's errors, his misunderstanding of Gurdjieff's teaching, and his failure. At the end of his life, Ouspensky was a heavy drinker, refused to see students. He had no answers for his students. He said to them that they had to abandon the system and make a new start on Mount Athos. This was very brave, I must say. Ouspensky had a lot of noble qualities and he was a serious man. There are very few teachers who, at the end of their life, recognized failure and admitted it. I've seen many teachers who have failed to raise the level of their students and who went to the grave without ever admitting that. They were small men, but Ouspensky was not a small man. He was a noble man. But there was a misunderstanding in his reception of Gurdjieff's ideas. Why that is, I don't know, but he didn't have Beelzebub's tails in his hands when he began his lineage. All this that I'm saying is quite obvious, and if you read Ouspensky's books and compare them with Gurdjieff's, the answers are right there. And I will be reading various sections from Ouspensky's books, In Search of the Miraculous and The Fourth Way. So let's begin with this first section. I recollect another remark, which afterwards proved a ground for much wrong reasoning and many wrong conclusions. This was that the three centres of the lowest story, the instinctive, the moving and the sex centres, work in relation to each other in the order of three forces, and that the sex centre in normal cases acts as neutralizing force in relation to the instinctive and moving centres. Further on, many people found contradictions between the first exposition of a given idea and subsequent explanations, and sometimes in trying to hold as closely as possible to the first, they created fantastic theories having no relation to what G actually said. Thus the idea of three centres was retained by certain groups which I repeat were not connected with me, and this idea was in some way linked up with the idea of the three forces, with which in reality it had no connection. First of all, because there are not three centres but five in the ordinary man. There are many wrong things about this statement. There are five centres, meaning in the lowest story, sex instinctive moving, in the middle story, mental emotional moving, which is a higher moving centre. Each story is made of three centres. Why? Because they receive the three forces, and this triad structure comes directly from the source. In our work to order our being, to order the structure of our identity, we are regulating the structure according to those three forces in each story. Gurdjieff's work does not concern the lowest story so much because it is already regulated. We are a creature that is struggling through the middle story, and so Gurdjieff's teaching concentrates on the middle story, which has become damaged due to the decay of human society that he goes into detail in Beelzebub's Tales. The decay over thousands of years. And the middle story no longer functions, so his work, his teaching, concentrates on the regulation of the middle story, which is the Triam as a Camno, which is that the three centers in the middle story receive the three forces, and as a result they recreate the identity, the real identity, which comes ultimately from the Sun Absolute through our Triam as a Camno. And that is the foundation of the teaching. And the result of that is what? When the Triam as a Camno in the middle story, inside a human being, when that functions, what is the result of that? The result is real I, or a true identity. Not a fictitious identity, but a true identity. That is the foundation of the teaching. Now here, in this these quotes that I've read out from Ouspensky, he is refuting that. He does not see the importance of that. And very strangely, he says that there are 5 centers in man. But he himself has organized the centers in terms of the stories, the lower story, the middle story, and the upper story. So that's a strange thing for him to say. I'll read some more. These are the 3 centers of the lower story. The sex center is the neutralizing center in relation to the instinctive and the moving centers. The lower story can exist by itself because the 3 centers in it are the conductors of the 3 forces. The thinking, the emotional, are not indispensable for life. So Ouspensky is quoting Gurdjieff here, who once again makes the division of centers into stories of 3 centers, and that is because the 3 centers conduct the 3 forces. The result of the Triam as a Camno in the middle story is real I. Now we can presume that in the lower story there is some kind of I, but at a much lower level. And the result of the upper story is a higher I. So each story has a result. So it is quite mystifying to me how Ouspensky can reject the idea of the 3-story structure, whilst at the same time quoting very nicely from Gurdjieff, expressing it. And because of that, Ouspensky did not do the work required to create real I in the middle story. If we go to Beelzebub's Tales, Gurdjieff makes very clear understanding of the importance and how our 3-centered work is developing the intelligences of those 3 centers, of the moving center which is in the spine, of the emotional center that is in the torso, of the mental center that is in the head. Our being particle duty, our working the line, develops them, and then they start functioning in that triadic shape of the Triam as a Camno, and they create the sense of real I. You should read those sections in Beelzebub's Tales, it's really very important. But somehow Ouspensky began his lineage with the centers, but with not understanding how they fit together, what the purpose of them is. And he didn't, in the rest of his teachings, he did not mention those things. And that began a deviation, because for Ouspensky himself, he did not have real I in the middle story. Ouspensky as a man had not done that work. And so everything that followed from him, all the work with the food factory, the ray of creation, the laws of the octaves, does not apply to Ouspensky. He cannot use those theories. He developed those theories really very beautifully, but only intellectually. Because those theories which are energetic in nature only apply to the real I, only apply to the actual man, only apply to the consolidated being. And as Ouspensky was not such a man, he was in the state of the false self, a mixed person. None of those developments that are indicated by the ray of creation and the energetic model of the food diagram, the alchemical work, they don't apply to Ouspensky because he had not established his real I. I think the reason for that is that Ouspensky was an Eastern facing man who was interested in cosmic consciousness. He wasn't really interested in what Gurdjieff was selling at all. He carefully wrote down Gurdjieff's ideas and sort of worked on them like a puzzle, but they did not apply to him. Because the energetic development of the food diagrams and the octaves, the enneagram and all that stuff applies to the development of a real man who has a functioning triamazecamno in the middle story and has the real identity. Those developments are only for such a man, and Ouspensky was not such a man. And so Ouspensky's lineage then is a group of students